I think to be honest, the couple of things that you've mentioned there, I'm keen to continue with. So what I should say is I'm keen that I move that we agree to delete Standing Order 16, and I'm also intend to move that we cancel the meeting on the 24th of August. So it may be that we can't get agreement on that, and we just have to have a division on it. But I'll take in Councillor Yule, because I think he's got his hand up. I'm not sure if it's on this or something else.
Well, it's on obviously this item, convener. It was to ask Mr. Bell if he could remind us how many people we can have in the current council chamber and still comply with existing social distancing guidelines, and how many we could have in the council chamber if that guideline was reduced to, say, 1 metre.
Okay, Mr. Bell, I think it's in the report, isn't it? I think it's about 15, is it, for the...
Yeah, 15 elected members, convener. The details in section 411 of the report, and we expect 4 officers would be able to attend a meeting in person as well. If it went down to 1 metre, we haven't done the calculations around that quite yet, but clearly we're monitoring the situation very closely. And we'll take steps to take the relevant calculations if need be.
Thank you. Councillor Yule, do you want to come back?
Yeah, it was just to thank you to Mr. Bell. I appreciate it in 411, but unlike Mr. Bell and you and me, convener, the no doubt thousands of Aberdonians watching us in an hour's time or so won't necessarily have the papers in front of them. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholl, do you want shall we just divide then, if you don't wish to accept that 2 points? Are you happy just to divide and you move your amendment?
I'm happy to divide. I mean, it's a relatively straightforward point. I don't see that there's a huge deal of difference between us. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Well, maybe better just formalise then. So yeah, as you say, we were coming back today to review the arrangements as was agreed at the previous Urgent Business Committee. It's clear that we are seeing the lockdown restrictions being lifted, and you know what we've heard today. It's positive in the way that the virus is being controlled currently in Scotland, which we should all take heart from, I think. I think it's sensible in that respect that we resume the committee structure. We've heard a bit today about democracy and things like that. I mean, I think when we took the emergency measures of putting the Urgent Business Committee in place, we did that for the right reasons, to make sure that that decision-making process could continue during the lockdown. But I think now that we are seeing the green shoots there, it's time to resume that committee structure. You'll notice that the pre-application forum, we're asking that is put back in place now, because I believe that there may be things that require to be heard at that committee, and August is still a little time off, so we would put that forward. We've said that we will use the council chamber, which we know is big enough for to accommodate the elected members for all meetings apart from the full council at this stage, but it's not to say we won't have further guidance by the time we get to the meeting later in the year. I'm proposing that we cancel the full council meeting on the 24th of August, because the only item of business on that schedule planner was in relation to the diary, which we are agreeing as part of these papers. It will be possible for us to webcast the meetings from the council chamber. As you know, we have that facility at full council, and so if there is any restrictions on the public and press being able to attend, then we will undertake to webcast that the meetings that are held there within the budget, because we do have a contract in relation to it. We only have a certain number of meetings a year that's covered by that contract, so we'll be mindful of that as well. So on that basis, and the only other thing was the Urgent Business Committee, the membership going back to 9, so reinstating that as well. You'll see that there's City Region Deal, the Joint Committee, standing orders, they made a change to that at the meeting we held earlier in the month, and that's us just underlining that. And also we have to appoint a member to sit on the chemo organisation, so that is Councillor Wheeler. Do you have a seconder?
Yep, happy to second, convener.
Thank you, Councillor Lumsden.
Yep, I think as Councillor Ewell said earlier, this is about democracy. Democracy should be protected. So I think it's good that we are starting to try. It's not going to be business as usual initially, but we're trying to get the committee meetings back up and working. I think it's also right that people will have the option to go back to the council chamber to take part in meetings, because I think yourself mentioned earlier that there was a councillor who has been in the press saying he doesn't trust the technology, so he will now have the option to take part in meetings that he may not have been able to take part in previously. In terms of the August full council, I think it's, as you said, there's no business scheduled to come, so it doesn't make sense to have that in the diary when we can actually give ourselves a bit more time to get ready for the next full council, and hopefully some of the physical distancing measures that Councillor Ewell mentioned earlier has been relaxed, but time will tell on that one. So happy to second you on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Lumsden. Councillor Nicholl, do you want to move your?
Yes, convener. Thank you very much. I think the first thing I would comment on is Councillor Lumsden's comment about nothing in the diary. There's very often when we set the diary, there is nothing down for a meeting, but things do change over the year, and I anticipate things will change still further. I think it is quite important that we leave these things in the diary until much nearer the time when we would know, especially given the fluid situation that we face with the whole COVID situation. It does strike me as being rather short-sighted to simply say that because at the end of June we haven't identified anything, we won't identify anything by the time 2 months or thereby have elapsed. I think that's a particularly short-sighted approach. The other issue we are dividing on is Rule 16 in respect of remote attendance. I do think it's important. We're not out of the woods yet. We've got a long way to go. There are councillors who would qualify as people who should be shielding in terms of their own health issues, but we also have members who will have family members who are required to shield, and as a consequence they should be very careful in taking themselves back into a public arena where they may in fact contract or spread COVID to their own loved ones. The remote attendance allowed for people to simply attend from a remote location, and it clarified all sorts of things in respect of voting. It took into account what would happen in the event of no agreement being reached, quorums, remote members casting their vote in terms of a roll call, any member declaring an interest they could withdraw, and there was quite a number of different points raised in it, and at this point in time we could well still have a situation where we have to return to requiring remote participation, and the rule is sitting there. If it's required, it's there. If it's not required, it's not doing any harm. I think we are primarily in agreement with the vast majority of the rest. If the administration wish to appoint someone to chemo, they should obviously go ahead and do so. I think that the other points, we are by and large in agreement. We've simply chosen to express them perhaps in slightly different language. But I do think that it is imprudent to remove something from the calendar simply because at this time, in such a fluid situation, there isn't anything on the agenda. I think that may well change, and we could find ourselves having to then call an urgent business committee that perhaps causes more inconvenience in the long term, not only to us as elected members, but more importantly to our officers who have had a very busy year to date and who are going into the summer hopefully for a well-earned rest, and the last thing they would need is for an unscheduled meeting to be called where they have to return to work. And I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Yule?
Yep, thank you, Convener. I'd be very happy to second Councillor Nicholl. There's a lot here on which, well, I agree with Councillor Nicholl and I think everything he said, but in terms of what you said, Convener, delighted that we're moving to resume the committee cycle. For myself, I would have done that earlier, as I think you gathered at the last urgent business committee meeting, but from the autumn is progress. Also welcome the urgent business committee going back to 9. Again, I would have done that earlier, but at least we're now moving in that direction. Like Councillor Nicholl, perhaps not unsurprisingly, I'd rather that we left the August council meeting in the diary. If come the start of August, there's nothing that needs to be discussed at that meeting, it's quite within the Lord Provost's remit to cancel it, and I would have thought that was a better way to go about it than get to the position in late July, early August, where we suddenly decide as an organisation that yes, there are some things we really could do with the council, or the council as a body discussing, and there's nothing in the diary. We've heard from various members and officers over the last couple of, 3 hours almost, that these are fast-moving times. And I think, Convener, it's a brave person who would predict what's going to happen in 2 weeks' time, never mind 2 months' time. I would also retain Standing Order 16 for the moment. It does no harm in leaving it in place. It provides a reassurance. As Councillor Nicholl has already said, we have members who are shielding, or who certainly have relatives who are shielding, and hopefully that won't be the position come the recommencement of the committee cycle, but it could well be so. So Standing Order 16 allows for retaining that, allows for that, and avoids us having to put in place another set of emergency measures if, for example, and certainly hope it's not the case, we end up in a similar situation to Leicester now sadly is. So I'll very happy to second Councillor Nicholl, but I'm also delighted to support most of what you said and most of what you've proposed as well. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yule. Councillor Bolton, I think you're indicating.
Yes, thank you very much, Convener. I'll obviously be supporting the motion that you're putting forward. I think it's sensible. We've already heard this, that Standing Order 16 isn't required for you to go to measures which would require us to be a distance meeting as we're doing today. We heard a lot before about democracy and transparency and trying to move us back as quickly as possible to the new normal. And I think what you've tried to do today in this motion is doing that. I think we've taken the decision to take the pressure off of officers about the full council meeting in August. There was nothing penciled in for the diary in terms of workload. I think the officers will have plenty to keep them busy, and if we need to, we can call an urgent business meeting, which we've extended the number of attendees to 9, which again the opposition had called on for us to do, and we've responded, and I think that's very clear that we are being responsive. What concerns me is that, you know, there seems to be again a little bit of procrastination by the opposition. 1 minute they want one thing, then the next want something different the next meeting. So I mean, I think you've been quite clear and quite concise with what you've said, Peter, and you have listened to some of their concerns from previous meetings. So yeah, I think you're on a bit of you can't win whichever way you jump, Convener. But you know, as the planning convener, I'm delighted that we can start pre-application forums. We've got quite a lot that are building up, which is a really positive news story for the city, that people are wanting to invest. They want to bring investment forward through pre-application forums, discussing with the planning committee the future ambitions they have in the city for Aberdeen. to see buildings come forward, to see investment come forward, and we're doing everything that we can, certainly, and the Chief Officer for Planning Sustainable Development has worked extremely hard to make sure that she sends out a very positive message that we are open for business, along with the planning team. That I'd just like to commend the work that they've been doing through this difficult time. So I'm more than happy to support you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Nicholl, do you want to sum up?
Yes, please, Convener. Thank you very much. I think we can keep it fairly short. As I think we're all agreed, we're by and large on the same page on most of this. The two issues that we've divided on, slightly unfortunate. I'm taking more of a built-in braces approach. I think it's very handy to keep Standing Order 16 in place, just for the avoidance of any doubt. If it's not needed, it's not needed, and it can be taken out the next time we review our standing orders. As I say, I think it's a very fluid situation. I'll be most disappointed if we have to cause greater inconvenience to officers calling an urgent business committee when something could have actually, because of the fluid situation, gone to a council committee that was penciled in. We've cancelled them in the past when there hasn't been business that's come forward as planned, and I think that would have been the sensible way going forward. Clearly, we don't agree on this. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholl. I'll be brief in my remarks because I am conscious of time as well. I think we've moved on since the previous Urgent Business Committee, both with the state of the current health crisis and indeed with how we're going to move the governance process forward. I'm appreciative of Mr. Bell and his team for bringing forward the report. That's what he was asked to do. He's clearly done that, and we are happy to reinstate the meetings. We had trying to take pressure off council officers, as Councillor Bolton pointed out there, has been very important in this crisis period. But I think it's important we try to get back to as much business as usual as we can. It's clear from what we've heard from Mr. Bell that we do have the ability, the convener of committees has the ability to allow people to access by virtual means, and I think that is sufficient. I don't see there's any point in having rules for rules' sake, and therefore I think it's right to suspend that and remove the standing orders that were put in place specifically as a result of the COVID crisis back in March. I think it's sensible for us to remove that. I also think it's sensible for us to cancel that council meeting. We don't have any business there. Once the council cycles are up and running, they'll be dealing with the bulk of business. And I think that it lets officers understand that they don't have to obviously get things ready or whatever for full council meetings, along with everything else. So I think it's a sensible approach, and I would commend the motion to members today. Let's go to the vote.
Thank you, Convener. The committee has before it a motion in the name of the convener and an amendment in the name of Councillor Nicholl. Would members please vote motion or amendment? Convener?
Motion.
Vice Convener?
Motion.
Councillor Bolton?
Motion.
Councillor Nicholl?
Amendment.
And Councillor Yule?
Amendment.
3 votes for the motion, Convener, 2 for the amendment. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dundren. Okay, that takes us now to 7.9, which is the work plans and business cases. We have a public paper at 7.9. There is obviously a exempt appendices, which gives further details. Are there any questions on the work plans that we have before us? Councillor Bolton, I noted your hands up, but I think it may be from the previous item. Yeah. Any questions on the work plans? Are we happy to approve the recommendations as they appear in the report?
Yes.
Yep. I'm not seeing any dissent from that.
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. Right. At this point, I'll take the motions that were referred from at the start of the meeting. So if we maybe start with 6.1, which was Councillor Nicholl's motion.
Thank you very much, Convener. If I can just give me a second till I get my papers into order. I thought we'd probably have some questions in and around the thing. Thanks. Right, ready to go. Thank you very much, Convener. Obviously, we were all...
Sorry, Convener, can I just check something?
Yes, Councillor Lumsden, sorry. Sorry?
Does there need to be a seconder before it's moved?
Oh yes. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Nicholl?
Yes, he does.
Okay, that's fine. On you go.
Thank you very much, Convener. Obviously, Councillor Lumsden told us earlier that he had been bitterly disappointed when COSLA had decided not to support the Aberdeen City Council suggestion regarding how we were to go about redistributing the £155 million Barnett Formula consequentials that were coming to Scottish local government. I think we can all agree that was indeed the case. At the end of the day, the funding formula that was used wasn't the fairest funding formula, not only for Aberdeen, but also for several other councils in Scotland. And I do think we need to take steps to try and address this. Now, I'm aware, and we will all remember, that we have previously written to Kate Forbes regarding this. And in fact, it was ourselves in the opposition that pointed out it was Kate Forbes that should be written to and not Kevin Stewart as the local government minister to actually address this. The government did come back and said that COSLA would actually decide, and this would be decided, they ruled in terms of a leaders' meeting where we were represented by Councillor Lumsden. Now, the leaders group decided not to support the position for a more equitable transfer of funds to councils. And I think we really do need to go back to them and highlight to them why this has been so inequitable and the steps that we need to take should there be any further funding coming forward, why it needs to be done on a different basis. I myself have met with officers, Mr. White, Mr. Belford. I'm sure other elected members have done likewise, and we've heard exactly what they have to say on this subject, and they have a clear and cogent message that they are quite willing to deliver to other council leaders across Scotland and also to their directors or chief officers of finance. I think it would be very important that we take that opportunity to deliver that message and to try and get a fairer settlement for Aberdeen. I did notice earlier on, Convener, you suggested that my two motions I was wanting to write to government. I would point out that's a slight misreading by yourself. I think we are needing to go back to the 31 local authorities and actually secure from them agreement that this is the best way forward and that we can actually hopefully make some inroads into the £9.5 million shortfall that has been identified for our particular council. I do think this is one of the occasions where we should all remain united in trying to achieve this, as we still have some distance to go in this pandemic. and it would be helpful if we were all on the same page on this particular issue. I'll leave it there for the moment and obviously come back with any comments from other elected members' speeches. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Yule to second.
Many thanks, convener. Just very briefly, because Councillor Nicholl's covered all the bases on this one. When Councillor Nicholl first contacted me about this draft motion that he had, I was very happy to say to him I'd second it on the basis I thought it was something actually all 5 of us would agree. Credit to Councillor Lumsden. He pursued the issue at a COSLA leaders meeting. Sadly, 31 council leaders of all political parties, including my own, didn't support that. This is not party politics, this is geographical politics. So there is no criticism implied here of Councillor Lumsden or members of the administration. As on this issue, we are as one, as we have been for, since 1996, I think. But convener, I'm happy to second Councillor Nicholl. Anything that we can do to keep this issue in front of colleagues around the country, the other 31 local authorities, I think is a sensible approach, and I would hope that we can all support what Councillor Nicholl has proposed. Thank you, convener.
Thank you, Councillor Yule. I believe Councillor Lumsden has an amendment.
Yes, that's right, convener. I've got an amendment, and that could be distributed now while I
Okay.
talk to the.
Okay, I'll maybe just
amendment.
check. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Bolton? I think.
Yes, I'm seconding.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Yes,
thank you.
Councillor.
First thing I want to do is actually is thank Councillor Nicholl for bringing this motion today and highlighting again that when it comes to funding, Aberdeen is near the bottom of the list. The distribution method used means that Aberdeen City Council is one of the lowest funded councils in Scotland every year. And I, like many others, will always bang the drum for a revised distribution method. Unfortunately, Councillor Nicholl's approach for bringing about change is flawed, in my opinion, and I'll look to address that in my amendment today. The first few points I think we can all agree on, especially point 3. The related revenue loss to COVID-19 does vary considerably, and it's clear that it's the cities that have seen the largest drop in income. And using the distribution models based on deprivation and rurality is not fair to be used at this time. And it cannot be right that it looks like some councils may actually make a profit from this terrible pandemic. We then move on to points that we cannot agree on. Councillor Nicholl wants the Chief Officer of Finance to write to the other Chief Officers of Finance in the other 31 councils, requesting they consider supporting an alternative distribution method for any COVID-19 consequentials. Well, it's not the Chief Officers of Finance that make the decisions and vote for change. It's up to the elected members at local and national level. You know, I've been a councillor for 3 years. I think I know how it works. Obviously, Councillor Nicholl's been a little bit longer, but maybe still is not aware of how that actual process completes. So I'm fine with to let the Chief Officer write to the other council leaders and see what they say. But as Councillor Yule pointed out in the press on May the 16th, other councils voting for change would be like turkeys voting for Christmas. But we'll see what they say anyway. In the same article, Councillor Yule said, he was on fire that day, that the Scottish Government needs to stop passing the buck by allowing COSLA to make these decisions and instead decide the funding allocations for councils itself, as only when that happens does Aberdeen stand any chance at all of getting a fairer funding deal. And Councillor Yule is absolutely spot on in what he says there. And that's why I'm proposing that we bring the matter up with the local government minister to try and change from the top how the money is distributed. COSLA won't change, but the Scottish Government can and must change. And we also need to make sure that any distribution method used for any additional money for education does not disadvantage Aberdeen. And that is why we have point 6 in our amendment today. So hopefully, as I've spelt this out, that everyone can agree on the revised wording that I'm bringing forward today. and hopefully there can be no division on this one. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lumsden. I think Councillor Nicholl indicated we are in debate, so unless it's to say that you're accepting the amendment, then I think I'm minded to bring in Councillor Bolton.
The amendment.
What was that, sorry?
I don't seem to have a copy of the amendment.
I haven't received it either.
Okay, right, that is a bit of an issue then.
But telepathy is not in my range, I'm afraid. Yeah.
I think that's just being circulated just now, convener. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully Councillor Lumsden kind of went through some of the aspects of it there, I think, in a bit of detail. So hopefully that gave you a flavour of what it is. I'll bring in Councillor Bolton to second, and then if you have any issues or you wish to take on board the amendment, then we can deal with that then. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you very much, convener. I'm more than happy to second Councillor Lumsden on this. I think Councillor Ewell himself acknowledged that we've had the same problem since 1996. But as Councillor Lumsden said, it's a poor show when we've got authorities who will profit from this tragic time that we're all going through, and Aberdeen City Council will yet again be left in a deficit. We need to come together on this, but we need to actually target where this message is going, and that is the Scottish Government. COSLA will not change. We left COSLA because of the very reason they wouldn't change. And, you know, unfortunately, Councillor Lumsden stole my asking turkeys to vote for Christmas line. So, you know, it's exactly that. And, you know, asking officers to try and persuade their own elected members to take less money, they've already made a decision at the COSLA meeting. I don't think it's going to go down well. Fine, if you want to speak to them, I think they will get short shift from their elected members. We have a problem. We're being as honest and transparent as we can by producing the costs that we are facing at this dire time. We're not profiteering, we're trying to cover our costs so that we can continue to deliver for our city. We've already expressed the fact that we earn 86% of the money that goes into the city. We can't do more. We need help, and we need the Scottish Government to step up to the plate and change the rules on funding right now. Today is a day later is too late. We need the money and we need it sorted out now. We heard from Mr. Belford earlier saying that there was going to be no more money coming to the councils on COVID, but we're always hopeful. We're always positive in Aberdeen, but we need to make sure that when money comes forward, that we're allocated our fair share and not shortchanged yet again, and at a time when it's critical. And as you said, convener, earlier, we're not just facing COVID in this city, we are facing a downturn in the oil and gas, which has a huge impact right across every sector, from the supply chain to the shops, the housing, everything. So we need help, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bolton. I think I'm the only one that hasn't entered the debate so far, so I might as well have a go now. I think we're collectively singing with one voice around the fact that funding for Aberdeen is not adequate. I'm glad, because that hasn't always been the case, I have to say. I know Councillor Ewell has on a number of occasions stood up in the chamber and joined us in those sentiments, but sometimes we've not been supported by SNP colleagues because they see it as an attack on the SNP government. I think what it is, it's about us recognising the fairness of the distribution system. Now, I accept that COSLA probably won't be rushing to the table to discuss in relation to funding, our annual funding from government, because as we've all said, a number of authorities, it would not be to their benefit to do so. But I think we do have a very different situation currently, where different councils are being impacted in different ways and to different degrees as a result of the public health crisis we all find ourselves in. And on that basis, I mean, I was heartened a little bit. I mean, I take on board what Councillor Bolton's saying about COSLA, because I have never been a great fan of COSLA, as you know, and actually led us out of COSLA and set up an alternative organisation, which I have to say, despite having 4 members, was much more effective in my thinking. We did represent 25% of the people of Scotland, so that might have had something to do with it. Although the Scottish Government said they wouldn't negotiate with us, they certainly did listen to us when we went out there lobbying for various things. But having said all of that, we do have a different situation here. And COSLA initially said that they would ask each of the local authorities to draw up a fairly extensive spreadsheet, I have to say, that actually detailed what our costs had been in relation to the COVID-19 situation. Now, a great deal of work went into that. You know, officers were very diligent because they believed it was important that they truly reflected what the impact was in Aberdeen. We submitted those in good faith, expecting that those figures, and indeed, I have to say, Kate Forbes, as the Minister of Finance Secretary, and some of the remarks she made, she obviously expected it to be delivered to her to show what the actual costs were that had been incurred by councils. Now, I would have thought that that would have been laid out individually, because they had those individual figures. They could see exactly how much each had incurred, and that would have been used in order to distribute any finances that were coming. Unfortunately for us, that was not the case. A global figure was put in by COSLA, I believe, and as a result, COSLA were given the opportunity to distribute the money. Now, again, COSLA failed, in my opinion, to look at any other possible formula that could be used, because the money that came forward was at 155, as we can see from the motion. I believe that the costs in total for all of the councils came to just about 330 million. However, I think we probably could have used some kind of formula that was based on actual need and actual costs, as opposed to the usual distribution formula, which takes absolutely no account of lost income. And that is why Aberdeen and others that are in a similar position to us have been so detrimentally affected by the way this has been shared out. So we need to make that clear. I think Councillor Nicholl at the beginning was pointing out to us that we were writing to the wrong people previously, and he told us how we should do that. I'm glad then that Councillor Lumsden's had the opportunity to return the favour here, because obviously in his amendment he's saying that it would not be appropriate for the Chief Officer to write to his colleagues, because he's quite right in what he says there. It's political decision making decided how that 155 would be determined, and there'll be politicians that will decide any other money that might come in the future. But I think what is important, because despite people asking and challenging COSLA to produce those figures, because we do believe that certain councils have benefited from the COVID-19 crisis, which I don't think anybody, any reasonably minded person could accept. But we did ask COSLA to produce the figures for the individual councils in order that that could be looked at, and they have refused. And I believe that they've refused a freedom of information or a request. I don't believe freedom of information actually applies to them, which is another anomaly. But I think they have refused a request from an MSP, one of that represents the North East, Lewis MacDonald, refused to provide that information. Indeed, the Scottish Government said they can't provide it because it's COSLA's information. So round and round we go. However, I do think we have an opportunity to make approaches to government and say that we believe this situation is incredibly unfair. So if there is an opportunity for further money to come forward, that we cannot see it distributed in this way in the future. Now, you'll be aware that the Cabinet Secretary for Education and Skills has made such an announcement just last week, around £100 million funding over the next 2 years for schools. I think it's important that we try to make sure that our voices are heard with government around how that money should be distributed. And that is why I'm happy to support what Councillor Lumsden has put forward in his amendment today, because if we can take any and all opportunities to bang the drum, I think it was Councillor Bolton said, for Aberdeen, we should be doing that. And I would hope we can do that collectively, and I would hope that Councillor Nicholl may consider accepting Councillor Lumsden's amendment in place of his. I support the amendment. Councillor Lumsden, do you want to sum up?
Yes, just briefly, Convener, yeah, just to say, I genuinely thank Councillor Nicholl for bringing this this motion today, because I think it is a very important issue and one that needs raised. You're right in saying that the amount of work that officers had done to pull all the data together and to work out, how much we had lost out due to COVID was, a huge amount of work done. That all was passed to COSLA, passed to the Scottish Government, and you're right to say then that the COSLA leaders decided to ignore that information and then distribute the 155 million just on their normal methods. You're also right to point out about the amount of secrecy around COSLA. It's a bugbear of mine that even the minutes from previous meetings seem to be exempt all the time, and the vast majority of reports that come to COSLA are secret also. And you're right also to point out that freedom of information for some strange reason doesn't apply to COSLA, so it's difficult to get much information out. I think it's not too late for the opposition parties to get on board with the amended motion that I've brought forward. I think it would be good, as I think it was Councillor Ewell said, that if we were united on this, and I think we've got an opportunity to be that. But we've got to be writing to the right people. There's no point writing to officers of other councils. We need to be writing to the elected members of those councils, but more importantly, writing and banging the drum to the Scottish Government instead. So yeah, I hope everyone can support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Lumsden. Councillor Nicholl, do you want to sum up?
Yes, thank you very much, Convener. Can I begin by saying how embarrassing it is to listen to Councillor Lumsden clearly not understanding some of the basic rules that apply in local government. It really is terribly embarrassing. It's almost embarrassing as failing to secure any support at a COSLA meeting. But of course, this is not the first time that's happened, and I'm sure in his case it won't be the last. The Chief Officers of Finance, of course, are governed by Cttee in terms of how they go about their business, and it would be a timely reminder to point out that Mr. White and Mr. Belford both were at some length to point out that they felt that advice had been open to some challenge in terms of what may or may not have been said to various elected leaders. Now, we don't know what that advice is, but I think we would have been making clear that we would have felt that that advice should have been different. The elected leaders are the people who potentially are going to be given further funding, and therefore it's important that they understand the effect not only on their own councils but on other councils, neighbouring councils. That clearly didn't happen at the last meeting, and I can only assume that was a failing on the part of Councillor Lumsden to take a fairly simple point and put it across. A further embarrassment is we keep wishing to write to the local government housing minister, Kevin Stewart, MSP, regarding matters of finance. As I pointed out the last time, we should have written to Kate Forbes, which you added in, as she is the person who controls the purse strings in these matters. Ms. Forbes did, in fact, as requested, give the money to COSLA, and it was Aberdeen City Council's representative, Councillor Lumsden, who embarrassingly failed to deliver for his colleagues. As regards freedom of information and other things, well, if Councillor Lumsden doesn't know what's happening at COSLA meetings, then I really do think the embarrassment gets to the point where he really should be thinking about whether he wishes to attend these meetings on behalf of the council or whether he wishes to send someone else. At the end of the day, where we have been is that the local government group that have met, the leaders group, to discuss this, clearly could have made a more equitable agreement in terms of how they would distribute the funds. Aberdeen City Council failed to put across the equitable result, and as a result, the GAE formula was used, which has left us and others slightly disadvantaged. I would have thought it was eminently sensible, rather than going down the road of writing yet more letters to the Scottish Government, that we address the people who need to be alerted to the problem here, because funding will no doubt flow back through COSLA in future, despite this administration's clear problems that it has with COSLA, and they're the people who need to be taken on board. I really don't think the approach that's being shown by the administration is at all helpful, and it's certainly not going to take us any further forward in our relationships with COSLA. I think this shows an embarrassing lack of understanding as to how that organisation works, and I would ask you to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Let's go to the vote.
Thank you, Convener. The committee has before it a motion in the name of Councillor Nicholl and an amendment in the name of Councillor Lumsden. Would members please vote motion or amendment? Convener?
Amendment.
Vice Convener?
Amendment.
Councillor Bolton?
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl?
Motion.
And Councillor Yule?
Motion.
3 votes for the amendment, 2 for the motion, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mrs Dunsworth. That now takes us on to item 6.2. Again, this is a notice of motion by Councillor Nicholl. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Nicholl?
Yep.
Is that Councillor Yule? Yeah.
Yes, it was, convener.
Okay. Right. I have an amendment to the motion. I don't know whether you want to have that circulated first to look at. See if there's any, or do you wish that circulated?
Be very handy.
Okay. Mrs Dunsmore, could we arrange for that to go round?
Yes, Convener, thanks.
Thank you. Shall we take, I'm conscious of time, but just to give people an opportunity to read through, do you want to take a 10-minute break?
Not really.
I just wondered if anybody needed a comfort break. You're happy to carry on? Okay. We're happy to proceed.
Yes.
I haven't got the words of the amendment yet. It hasn't appeared in my inbox yet, convener.
All right. Has that been sent round, Mrs. Dunsmore?
It has come round, I think. Let me just check. Yes. We can put it in the chat as well, if that would help.
Okay.
It's just appeared, convener, in my inbox. Yeah, I've read it now. Thanks, convener. Thank you for pausing for a couple of seconds there.
Fine. Okay, Councillor Nicholl, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, convener. Thank you very much. I think we really have quite a straightforward motion here. I think we were all concerned to hear from Aberdeen Harbour Board, who, of course, we all realise are a completely independent body, but nonetheless a very important body in the economic life of our city. They obviously have had a problem that has arisen in respect of the Aberdeen South Harbour development following the withdrawal of Dragados from the contract. This is a project of strategic importance to the city and will, of course, challenge the situation that the North East already faces even more. We clearly need to monitor this situation because such a strategic project will impact in many different areas of the local economy. And I do think that we need to be on top of this situation, and we should have some details brought back to us of what is happening to ensure that the impact on the completion date of this project and the wider impact that any delay will cause to our economic growth and our wider local economy is actually highlighted in order that we can A, keep abreast of the situation, and B, consider any mitigating measures that may be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Yule to second.
Yes, convener. Happy to second Councillor Nicholl. I'll leave it there, given the hour.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yule. I think we can all agree the importance of the harbour development. I think we've known for some time that the provision of that deep water is imperative to the plans that we had, not just around the cruise ship aspect, but I think in recent times we've seen how the new harbour development will actually help us to deliver on that energy transition vision that we have, because the opportunities with the new South Harbour mean that that offshore wind piece in particular could be facilitated far more than we thought previously. Now, it's quite clear, I think, from the information that's filtering through that the Harbour Board have experienced difficulties in addition to the COVID-19 situation, which has obviously led to that contractor pulling out of the project, which I think is disappointing. I would like to commend the Harbour Board because I think they have been exceptionally good at keeping both the council and local members informed of developments, not just in times when there have been detrimental impacts to the project, but also throughout the delivery of the project to date. And I think we should acknowledge that. Now, it's clear from what Councillor Nicholl mentioned at the beginning and what I've said that it's obviously a very important project to us locally, but it is a nationally significant project as well, and that has been noted by Scottish Government. And I think it's clear from Scottish Government's recent announcements around that green energy piece and the money, the 62 million that they have put forward for investment in that net zero vision, and for various projects that are within that vision. It's clear that they see that it's important that that project is delivered. It is a cornerstone, I believe, to the development of Aberdeen as an energy transition capital of Europe, and it's important that we make sure that it can be delivered if at all possible. So that's why we wanted to go further than Councillor Nicholl in just noting the situation and indeed asking officers to report back. We wanted to go further than that to try and see if we could safeguard the future of this project. And we are aware that the Harbour Board have written to the Scottish Government in their own right, asking for the opportunity to explore how business support measures might be applied to help them deal with the impact currently and make sure that the project is delivered as close to time as possible. I think, given the partnership working that we have with them, we have some investment around the onshore infrastructure as part of our city deal that the council has contributed to. So we are in partnership to try and make sure that this important project is delivered. So I think it's right that we step forward and show them a little support as well in writing to Scottish Government, asking if they can explore any avenues possible that will allow the Harbour Board to move forward and we can have the project delivered. So that's the basis of my amendment, and I think I have a seconder in Councillor Lumsden, I think it was.
Yes, happy to second, convener. I think you're right to mention that this is a project that's not just key to the local economy, but the national economy. And that's why we need to be doing a lot more than just what Councillor Nicholl set out in his original notice of motion. I think we've shown before, we've actually seen it earlier today, we're not about defer, dither, delay, we're about action. And this is why our amendment to that notice of motion actually goes a lot further than what Councillor Nicholl had originally brought. I'm actually surprised he's not supporting many of the things that we're bringing today. I thought he would like to mention the 62 million from Scottish Government, but obviously he hasn't fully understood what we're bringing. So this is about safeguarding the project that's key for the city. This is about action, as I said before, and this is not just about sitting back like Councillor Nicholl wanted and just wait for some reports to come back. So I will be happily supporting your amendment that actually tries to drive things forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lumsden. Councillor Bolton, do you wish to enter debate?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief, convener, because I think you said most of what needs to be said. I think it's just that we need to acknowledge this is the Harbour Board's project, and as you said, we have had an impact with the city region deal on the project. But I think whatever we do must be complementary to what the Harbour Board's doing and not being seen to undermine their project, but absolutely 100% behind you in making sure that we try and get the Scottish Government to recognise they can't just say it's of national significance and step away. They have to step up to the plate. The times get tough for the Harbour Board and make sure it's delivered, because the North East, as we diversify, will need that harbour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I think the points you've made are very pertinent. It is important that we show support for the Harbour Board, but we have to accept that they are an independent organisation and have the right to move forward with the project in the way that they want to. I would agree. I would have hoped, Councillor Lumsden, I think you pointed out that Councillor Nicholl might have taken some of these on board. Given the way the Scottish Government have reacted so positively, both to the harbour development and indeed that energy transition piece and the energy transition zone and that's clear from the £62 million that they brought forward just a couple of weeks ago. Who knows, he may choose to include it into his motion like he did at the budget when he took just about everything. I think it was 95% you mentioned earlier. I lost count, but because they were reeled off at quite quick pace. But perhaps Councillor Nicholl will consider taking on board the amendment that he has before him as well. And I wait to hear what you've got to say in his summing up.
Thank you very much, Convener. Can I begin by saying, once again, quite disappointing at the level of leadership from the political administration of the council. It would never be a meeting of this council if we didn't find ourselves writing to the Scottish Government, on the one hand complaining, and then suddenly on the other we are now trying to be complimentary of the £62 million that will be delivered into the North East economy over the next while. It really does never cease to amaze me. It's actually quite embarrassing. I think the simple point is no one has ever suggested otherwise, that Aberdeen Harbour Board is anything other than an independent body. We have heard so much about cruise ships, we've heard so much about decommissioning, we've heard so much about free ports, and I'm simply moving a motion that requests that we keep on top of a situation which has serious ramifications for our city, our region, and our local economy. That is very straightforward and makes a very sound sense to me. At the end of the day, the Scottish Government have clearly shown that they do support this project. It's a strategic development that's taking place, and it's not just of strategic importance to the city, it's of strategic importance to the country. And it would be remiss of us if we didn't keep this on our radar. At the end of the day, what we have is an amendment that is long on verbiage and doesn't really deliver anything that wasn't suggested in the original motion. Very disappointing and very embarrassing that the political administration of the council couldn't think of something better. Back to you, Convener.
Let's go to the vote.
Thank you, Convener. The committee has before it a motion in the name of Councillor Nicholl and an amendment in the name of the convener. Would members please vote motion or amendment? Convener?
Amendment.
Vice Convener?
Amendment.
Councillor Bolton?
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl?
Motion.
Councillor Yule?
Motion.
That's 3 votes for the amendment, 2 for the motion. Convener, the amendment carries.
Thank you. That now takes us on to motion 6.3, which is a notice of motion by Councillor Malik. Now, I believe that Councillor Malik may be coming in to replace Councillor Bolton.
That's correct. And then I'll come back in for the next one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Malik, do you wish to, well, first of all, you have a seconder in.
Yep, I'll second.
Yeah.
Councillor Lumsden.
Okay. Councillor Malik, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you so much, Convener. I'm proud to be putting forward this motion to the Urgent Business Committee, as Black lives do matter. And we as councillors must acknowledge the peaceful dream where hundreds of anti-racism protesters took to Union Street highlights those affected by racial injustice. There is a problem with racial inequality within Scotland because of prejudice, bias, and just racism. We are also witnessing what appears to be the beginning of the second civil rights movement in the USA, and this movement has been spreading globally, including to the UK. I want to express unequivocal support for the sentiments of the protesters, and I would like to make this statement. I have noted with horror and sadness the killing of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer on Monday, the 27th of May, 2020. My motion highlights the death of George Floyd as well as the death of Ekubahe, who died here in Scotland. I'm asking the Chief Executive to write to the Ambassador of the United States condemning the use of force by police officer on George Floyd, which resulted in his unfortunate death, as well as writing to Scotland's Justice Minister asking for an update any proposed legislation the Scottish government intend to introduce to ensure Black Lives Matter right across Scotland. Thanks very much, and I hope everybody will support me.
Thank you, Councillor Malik. Are we happy to support the motion, or do we have any amendments? Councillor Ewell.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Councillor Malik. I'm very happy to support the motion, but I wondered if Councillor Malik might accept a slight change in wording at 6. Condemning the use of force by police officers on George Floyd, which resulted in his unfortunate death. Convener and Councillor Malik, I would suggest that we could remove the words unfortunate death and insert the word murder, which is what those officers have been charged with. I'm not going to force it to a vote or anything, convener, but I think murder is the right word.
I don't doubt that that is the case, but I'm not sure legally.
Yeah.
The fact that nobody has actually been convicted of that. Perhaps Mr. Bell could give some advice around that.
Yeah, convener, I'd probably just urge caution on the use of those words, given that it's merely allegations at this stage and there's been no conviction. So I would suggest to the committee that they perhaps just retain the current wording on that advice.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Ewell, are you content to withdraw your suggestion based on what you've heard from Mr. Bell?
As I said, I'm not going to force anything to a vote, and Mr. Bell's guidance does seem fairly clear.
Okay, thank you. On that basis, then, the terms of the motion remain as laid down. Can we agree? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Agreed. I was just going to thank Councillor Malik for bringing this motion today. I think it's so important to everyone.
Convener, I've got my hand up.
Yes, Councillor Nicholl, did you want to? Have you got an amendment or?
I actually have a suggestion that Councillor Malik may wish to take on board. We've obviously gone from America to Fife, and we've come back to Aberdeen, and we are going to the Court of St James. In his motion, we're travelling around. I wondered if he would consider actually taking some of this back to Aberdeen and seeing if we could have a report brought back to see how we as a council could address the racial inequalities in Aberdeen in consultation with the BAME community and any other multicultural organisations. It does seem to be an ideal opportunity for us to put our own house in a better place than it maybe was before.
Yeah, it's covered. See if you, in my motion number 4, it is already covered. It is Aberdeen is covered as well.
Well, I agree. I agree that at number 4, you're agreeing to work with organisations in the Black Lives Matter poster process in the city to mount an exhibition. But what I'm suggesting is we could perhaps go a bit further, and we could ask the Chief Executive to bring something back to address the racial inequalities that exist in Aberdeen in consultation with the BAME and other multicultural organisations. It's to take it to the next level and actually try and make our city an even better place than it is.
But Councillor Nicol, sorry, through yourself.
No,
Convener.
Councillor Malik, it was just to ask whether you wish to consider the production of a report. I'm not sure if we have the Chief Executive with us today. I'm just thinking about, because we're talking and nothing is actually written down or laid down, it's difficult to know what the extent of that, what we would expect back in a report. That's the difficulty that I have, because we have nothing laid before us to look at what that legal aspects would be and things.
Well, I'll leave you put it in an email round or to the clerk. But I mean, it's simply that we would have an opportunity to outline how Aberdeen City Council could address racial inequalities in Aberdeen in consultation with our own BAME community and multicultural organisations. I'm sure we can improve, as I'm sure probably every council in the country could improve. It seems to be an ideal opportunity to actually take some positive action out of a very unfortunate situation.
Okay, Mr. Bell, are you content with the nature of the wording that's been put forward?
That is to bring a report back to committee.
Yes.
Convener. I just wonder if at this stage, if it'd be worth bringing in Mr. McGowan, who could perhaps give some assurance in terms of the work that we already do currently as an organisation.
Because that's the difficulty that I have, is I know there are a lot of partnership working and things going on in the city around this, and bringing that onto the table here and now, without any context to it, I think it may be an idea. Do we have Mr. McGowan with us?
Yes, Convener. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, an interesting topic. We are normally on an annual basis reporting on inequalities impact assessment to Council already, and that details a number of the steps that we take, a number of the organisations that we work with, and it provides assurance to Council that those steps are being taken, that we're engaging with communities across the city. And so, as I said, that's an annual report, so that may already give assurance to Council that that work is being undertaken.
Sorry, I think I went there. I'm not quite sure what happened there. So if you were talking, Mr. McGowan, I missed that because I seem to go on hold there. Okay,
I was saying that we, on an annual basis, report inequalities impact assessment to the Council already to provide assurance on the work that we do with communities across the city. So that's already on the committee agenda to come back to you at some point this year. So and rather than a new report, that may already give the assurance that Councillor Nicholl's requiring or seeking rather. Yes, I mean, I'll obviously go back to Councillor Nicholl, but I think that sounds like we would get the information that perhaps he's looking for through that means, and it would give people an opportunity just to work through that. Councillor Nicholl, are you content with what Mr. McGowan said, that we would get that opportunity to have that information fed back to the committee structure and discussed and actioned if required?
Yes, I mean, if Mr. McGowan's able to take it on board as part of that existing piece of work, I do think it would be helpful for us to look in our own backyard, as it were. And I see you nodding your head, Convener. We clearly do have racial inequalities in our society, and I think it would be helpful if we could have a look at that and see how we could improve it. I was aware. I don't think anybody disagrees with you, Councillor Nicholl, but I think it does appear to me from what we've heard from Mr. McGowan
that piece of work is going on, he will be able to reflect that. And you're quite right that we should all be looking through a critical lens at our own organisations as well as outwardly as well. But I think from what Mr. McGowan's saying is that work is ongoing, and we will have a report back which will give that information. So I think on that basis, I think Councillor Malik, do you wish to just keep the motion as is, and hopefully we can now get agreement?
Yeah, thanks very much, Convener. I was just going to say that we heard from Mr. McGowan, and which is enough clarification. So I would rather keep my motion as it is, and hopefully I will get agreement from all of my members. And also we have a zero tolerance policy in place as well. It does cover this aspect as well. So I'm happy to keep my motion as it is. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholl, are you happy to agree the motion?
Yes, Convener, it was merely suggesting something. I saw Mr. White was trying to come in. He obviously has something helpful to say.
Okay, I didn't see him indicating, but I'm not sure that I've got that many people on the call at the moment, I think. Mr. White, did you have something helpful to say?
Yes, Convener, it was just to remind the committee that the audit report that you had before you this afternoon, page 42, it comments on equal opportunities within the council, and in there it states that it is clear that the council is acting as a leader in the region on equal opportunities, and that the council is an equal opportunities employer. There's quite a big section around that and the work that the council is doing, which Mr. McGowan was referring to, around the community, including BAME, lone parents, homeless, young people and disabled. So just a reminder that the committee has actually had something on this already this afternoon. Thank you.
That's helpful for you giving us that reminder. It seems such a long time ago now, because we've been at this for quite some considerable time now, but I think it's helpful to everybody that you've pointed that out. On that basis and what we've heard, I'll ask for a third time. Can committee agree Councillor Malik's motion?
Agreed.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Malik, for coming and bringing that before us, because I think we all accept this is an incredibly important issue. And as I mentioned earlier, we shouldn't just be outwardly looking, we should also be looking with a critical lens at what goes on closer to home. And I think you've brought that to our attention by bringing that, so we appreciate you tabling that motion. And thanks for your attendance today.
Thank you so much.
Right, I will now bring in, I'll bring in Councillor Bolton back in for Councillor Malik. And I think that now takes us on to the last motion that that we had before us, and that's actually one in the names of myself, Councillor Lumsden and Councillor Bolton. I think the motion speaks for itself. Are you happy to agree?
Agreed.
Yeah. Councillor Nicholl, are you happy to agree, or do you have a...
Yeah.
Happy to agree. Okay. Thank you for that. It's nice to end on a note where we're all in agreement. Right, that does end the public session of the meeting. The tape recording will now stop as we move into exempt business. We have one item of business there.